What is going on, guys? Welcome to the Purple and Gold Bars Show. I am your host, Supreme Overlord, aka Mr. AI Man 3000, aka Mr. Purple and Gold Bars, at your service. Thank you so much. You guys have reached the number one spot for an optimistic, outside of the box way of thinking, in order to give you guys a different perspective than the different negative ones you might be bombarded with every single day whenever you watch sports talk shows or even your favorite YouTube channels. We are going to be covering today the trending topics of the week, starting with Mr. Trevor Lawrence and their upset win against the Chiefs last night. But first, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe. We're on the road to 500 subscribers, and I believe we can make it by the end of the calendar year. So I really appreciate your support, and all you new subscribers, thank you so much for joining me on this journey, growing into hopefully the channel that I envision becoming one day. All right, guys, so let's get right into it, because we have, hey, what's going on, MJ? Man, MJ, you're here all the time. Okay, let's start with the topic of the hour. Trevor Lawrence outduels or outperforms Patrick Mahomes, whichever way you want to spin it. The Jacksonville Jaguars are starting to turn some heads, starting to change some narratives so far. I know it's still a small sample size. We're only, 5 games into it. Also, there's still a lot of football to be played. So, you got to take what's happened in the first 4 weeks in the NFL, or 5 weeks in the NFL, more with a grain of salt than at the very end of the year. But hopefully, if the trajectory keeps going in the right direction, if they continue to produce the way they are, I think the Jacksonville Jaguars might be able to turn this negative narrative behind their franchise. So big ups Trevor Lawrence. He had a huge game, 18 for 25, 222 yards or 21 yards, 72% completion rating, completion percentage, an average of 8.84 yards per pass, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, took 3 sacks, and had a overall QB rating of 95.6. It's pretty darn good against a Spagnuolo-led defense, right? We all know that Spags has a heck of a scheme, and he's got a different way, a unique way of looking at things. And for us Viking fans, we're no stranger to having a defensive coordinator as unique as Spagnuolo is. So a big task, to face for Trevor Lawrence. I think it also is worth mentioning the fact that I feel like the Mike Shanahan coaching tree, KOC, Sean McVay, whichever branch you want to call it, is really making a massive impact in modern football. Earlier in the month, Mr. Small head, frickin' the defensive coordinator from San Francisco, said, "Oh, that coaching tree, they got the legal sign stealing protocol going on, and it is what it is. We just gotta be, you know what, buddy? Like I said then, and I'll say now, control what you have, control your team, and guess what? You don't have to run the same signals every week." Shocker, isn't it? But I think right after that, you got proved by these Jaguars themselves that you need to focus on what you can do and not others. Because, man, what this coaching tree has done to a whole bunch of different teams, reshaping their narratives, their future, has been insane. We've seen it with San Francisco, Sean McVay and the Rams, my Minnesota Vikings, and now the Jacksonville Jaguars, right? Their coaching staff, I know they poached a couple of our coaching staff and brought them onto there. And I know their head coach, I believe, is more direct out of the Sean McVay coaching tree, if I'm not mistaken, but all under the umbrella of the Mike Shanahan tree. So I think it's a good point to make of how much impact this philosophy, this coaching tree is making in the NFL. And guess what? Last night we saw the proof, and man, the cream might be starting to rise to the top. These Jacksonville Jaguars have, I think, already at this point turned a lot of heads. You know, me personally, I was still stuck in that mindset of like, man, it really sucks for this team to have such potentially, such players with high potential, but never really accomplishing too much up until this point. And I kind of was, falling prey to that narrative, and I kind of writ them off. And going into the season, man, they have shocked me. I like what they're doing down there, and I think it deserves to be spoken with. Big ups to Trevor Lawrence in a fantastic game. Big ups to Mr. Travis Hunter on that final drive of the game, trying to get themselves into good position. He caught a pass that he could have easily allowed to be taken down right where it was, but he fought for some extra yards. You know, that heart is incredible to see. Travis Hunter, man, he keeps, they use him sporadically, and some people want him to be out there every snap and getting, so many targets and just kind of feeding him. But you know what? Growth isn't linear, and we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. There might be other players that are excelling at the things that they wish he could do, so they're leaning on those guys until he becomes that. But you know what? I am still super excited for Travis Hunter and what he can produce going forward. You never know. He might be our modern-day Deion Sanders, the two-way player that we've seen or hope to see in for a long time now. So big ups to Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars for coming up with a massive upset win. What a heck of a finish. The grit, the determination at the very end. He slips, falls, gets up, fights to try to make a play, realizes there's nothing there, and he just puts it on himself to push himself into the end zone for that incredible go-ahead score. It was incredible to see. Man, Trevor Lawrence is doing great. I'm not going to crown him just yet, because I am definitely on record for saying that drawing too much from a small sample size is only gonna give you randomness masquerading as meaning. So yeah, it is an incredible thing to see. I'm happy to see what's going on there. Some of these downtrodden organizations and franchises, they continue to show up and support their team with as much passion as some of our leading teams like the Eagles, the Bills, the Chiefs, even our Minnesota Vikings. Those guys need some love too, and it's awesome to see them starting to turn things around. And I hope that it continues in the way that they do, and if not, and is also transitions into the following years. So big ups to Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, the next topic that I want to talk about is Jordan Addison. There's been a lot of talk that I've seen, a lot of vitriol, and a lot of people coming out and criticizing or saying what you will about Jordan Addison. It's no secret now, if you guys haven't heard, Jordan Addison, the reason why he didn't play in the first quarter in the game against the Browns is because he was benched due to missing a walkthrough prior to the game. So, a sign of immaturity, and I totally get it. I understand the frustration that our fan base or even others have with someone, especially someone that has so much talent and potential going forward. So I totally understand where that frustration is, but the position that I'm going to take, and it might be controversial, but I refuse to throw stones at Jordan Addison for his immaturity. I understand the frustration and the want to take it out on him for being immature, but I was not perfect as in my youth, and was not perfect in my transition from immaturity to maturity. I'm still immature at times, and I still fall prey to that immaturity. And because I wasn't perfect, I'm not going to judge him, and I'm not going to throw stones at the young man. So that's my statement or my stance towards the vitriol and the anger towards Jordan Addison right now. So I understand, and a lot of people are using that anger or that frustration to kind of justify wanting to call for the Vikings to trade him or whatnot, or punish him further, whatever it is, But I'm not gonna jump on that bandwagon, and I'm not gonna judge you or condemn you for taking that approach, because I understand everybody's different, and we're all gonna have our different thoughts. And for me, we're gonna agree to disagree, and I'm not gonna hold any animosity against anyone that I see on Twitter or any content creators or anybody voicing that opinion in the chats or in the comments. That is your position to take in your opinion, and you're definitely entitled to that, and I'm never going to dog you for that, okay? But I won't be blind to the reality of the situation either on a financial aspect, right? A lot of good points were made out of that vitriol that I had to stop and think to myself and be like, hey, I was ready to just be like, let's just let it go, move on. Jettis is sitting there taking responsibility, showing the leader that he is, and saying, hey, I'm going to do better, and kind of guiding him and helping him, become more of that mature player, because he remembered himself being, what he was like when he first came into the league. So I commend Jettis for that, and I think that's a valuable asset to have. And I'm going to bank on that he's going to do a great job at guiding him and making him mature, so that doesn't continue to be a trend, and he moves past that as from a young player to a mature and a veteran player as he grows up. But a lot of people were talking about how coming into the offseason, we got a lot of glaring holes. We've got taken a bunch of massive injuries to the O-line, or we've sacrificed a lot in free agency by bringing in other players that are more suitable for the pass rush or pass coverage, instead of bringing in run stoppers that we either traded away or let move on in free agency. So it is very apparent that despite the effort and the hustle that the defense does put on every single time a running play is called against them, it's not enough. It's evident that specific skill set amongst our defensive line and the backups and the substitutes that we have playing just don't have that skill set. And so those dire needs are something that need to be addressed, right? And with Jordan Addison's rookie contract coming to an end soon, a lot of people have been making the argument, and I think it's a very solid financial or fiscally responsible observation, that it might be, we don't want to be what the Cincinnati Bengals are right now, where they have such an incredible duo in their two receivers, overpaid, some people would say. Well, maybe not Jamar Chase, but maybe Higgins, and as a result, they're not able to invest in their O-line, and then therefore Joe Burrow continues to get injured, and we've seen now he's going to be out for the majority of the season, if not the entire season, if they don't have any future when he is future left in this season, when he is able to return or start practicing, right? So I understand that logic, and with that being said, but a buddy of mine, Lefty, said, the salary cap is only getting bigger, so it might not even play a factor. And I totally see. I understand that financial counter argument as well. But it would be remiss for me, because I like, as optimistic as an objective as I like to be, I don't like to ignore signs, warning signs, or things that we should be focusing, or not focusing, but being aware of as they develop, because sometimes those things can develop into trends, right? So I don't want to be put in that situation where in the offseason we don't have the financial cap space to be able to bring in more run stoppers, or bring in more offensive linemen, whatever that may be. Now, mind you, I also said, it might be a little bit different in the offseason going into it, where we have made some trades in the middle of the season, for maybe a run stopper or this and that. So maybe it won't be as much of a need to try to move off a player like Jordan Addison in order to save save some money, to be able to bring in a run stopper or an offensive lineman, whatever it is, right? Another Brian Flores guy, someone that could be potentially a bridge guy, to allow some of our younger guys to develop into the leadership in that we have from like Blake Cashman, which is, he's an older guy, right? He has been injury prone, right? So there are pressing needs on this team. So I totally understand the arguments that people are saying, especially when they are trying to justify, moving on from Jordan Addison. So I'm not going to deny those. I totally agree with the being fiscally responsible, financially responsible with this team, because the more rounded our roster is, the better we are going to be to support JJ, especially this year as the season progresses through his growing and development, and then hopefully next year, so they're more stable and a better roster to accommodate him as he takes on that second year and hopefully tries to avoid a second year slump, right? So I understand it. I get it. I'm not going to dog anybody for it. You guys, I understand. And I'm not gonna be angry about it. I'm just going to give you guys my position on the situation. Me personally, I understand, and I look at it more on the fiscally thing. But, Realistic Randy made a great point on Purple Parlor yesterday about how, there are just some guys out in the league that they can just do no wrong. And, behind closed doors, the GM, even though the coach and the GM are saying in press conferences, we got to buckle down on this and it's going to be handled and, discipline, whatever's going to be, they say all the right things to the media, but behind closed doors, it very much well be a situation of like, bro, you're killing me here. Like, I can only cover for you so long before, I have to do something about this, right? So please give me some help and start fixing these things, right? So I totally understand. Realistic Randy made an incredible point there, and to back up on that, like a lot of that same vitriol and anger, even more so, was thrown towards Ray Lewis back in 2000 after that incident, that notorious incident that nearly landed him in jail, right? So a much older guy that fell prey to his immaturity, right? Like not even young guys, can not only the young guys, not as well as us older guys, can also fall prey to our immature tendencies and our lack of self-control. So, imagine had they decided right then and there to just move on from Ray Lewis, and just never look back. Would that era of Ravens football be the same? He redeemed himself and he continues to, and he goes, and I know he speaks about it, and he tries to mentor the young guys, especially younger players that are in similar rough states where they're, acting out. And if he wasn't shown grace, would he be doing that today? I don't know. It's hard to say, but I'm grateful for the fact that the Ravens were able to kind of hold their resolve and give him a chance to redeem himself. So that's what I hope that our Minnesota Vikings do. And I hope that the fans find it in their heart to be able to show him a little bit of grace and humility that way. And, and let him grow up a little bit, even though it sucks at times. Because, and hopefully that, that final touchdown to win us the game maybe kind of is a little bit of motivation to kind of help you realize that, maybe we should have a little bit of patience with this guy. And, in the off season, if we may have to make a financial decision in order to move on, to maybe get a high draft pick from a team that might, we might be able to do something with that, whether that's drafting his replacement or drafting a potential O-line or a potential top tier run stopper coming out of college. That, I'm not opposed to any of that, and I understand it. So that is my point and my perspective on the Jordan Addison. Holy moly, we got MJ Rains, we got Ryan or Rin. Sorry if I keep mispronouncing your name, Ryan. I hope it's Ryan. And Mike Sports Vibe in here talking. I will talk that talk because you inspire me to talk that talk, man. And if it wasn't for you and your consistency and your daily football walks, man, I don't know if I would have found the confidence to do what I do now. You're a big internal motivation for me, and I love you for it, man. And thank you so much for continuing to lead by example. I think you're a great, optimistic pillar in our Vikings community. So big ups to you, Mike. And I hope nothing but the best for you and your family. You know that. I text you that all the time. So let's move on to the final topic that I want to talk about today. And that is JJ McCarthy. Let me see here. Let me pull up the notes on this one that I had. Now, I've been harping all season about, diving too deep into small sample sizes. And I've repeated this statement that I kind of crafted from just my knowledge from school, market research. I took a bunch of market research courses, and I remember being one of the first things I learned in like market research 100 was don't overanalyze the first small bit of sample size that comes in when you're doing a survey or doing market research. It's good to see and see what kind of things start to emerge in the beginning, to see what kind of trends, start to develop. But whenever you do that, you're only going to find randomness masquerading as meaning. And, after a 2-game sample size, people have been ready to write JJ McCarthy off and anoint Carson Wentz after a 1-game sample size. Now that sample size is grown a little bit, and we've seen he can do great. He's a great backup quarterback, and with KOC and his ability to, work and get the most out of veteran quarterbacks, he's done great. And he has proven that he was the right choice to be our insurance and our backup quarterback. Let's not be mistaken. Okay, he is QB2, and that is what he was hired to do and what he should be going forward. I just really don't think people understand what they're asking for when they say we need to roll with Carson Wentz. First of all, the people that immediately jumped on the Carson Wentz train after a 1-game sample size is mind-blowing to me, especially when it's a smaller sample size than what JJ McCarthy has put together. And as well as Carson has performed, and the great things that he's done late to bring us back into games and even win us games, is a sign that his floor is a lot higher than JJ McCarthy's is right now. But don't get it twisted, guys. JJ McCarthy's ceiling is so much higher than Carson Wentz is right now and will be going forward. And I wholeheartedly believe that once this team is fully healthy and the quality of the roster and this team is more than capable of winning the same amount of games that Carson Wentz can win with this team, and most likely enough to sneak us into the playoffs. And more importantly, if JJ McCarthy is able to run through the season and do his best throughout that, I feel like even in a loss, having him appear in a playoff game is only going to only serve to be massive for his growth and development going forward into next year. So I want you guys to be patient, understand that this season, like I said prior to this season's going to be a roller coaster. And then I switched that and I said, this is going to be a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type of season. We're going to have a ton of flashes. We're going to have a whole bunch of growing pains. But regardless of the fact, the roster, the defense, everything around JJ McCarthy and our quarterback situation is designed to always keep us in games, give us an opportunity to come back, and then if JJ or Carson, whoever is that quarterback, finds a way to complete that comeback, we can win more than enough games to make it to the playoffs and see what this kid can do and have him learn through experience so he can develop into the franchise quarterback that I know, that I'm absolutely certain that he will be in the near future. So I really wanted to touch base on that, and I wanted to give you guys some real world examples because I keep saying this and sometimes it doesn't hit home like I wish it would. And I like to use in my training career, I like to use examples or stories or metaphors because sometimes people understand differently through story or through example than through just straw or just raw data and definitions or and stuff like that, right? So I want to pull up some real world examples from some big companies, as well as some, and also dive into some examples from some players that also fit the narrative, right? Or not the narrative, the example that I'm trying to make. For example, Coca-Cola in 1985 came out with the new Coke. Coke tested new Coke with focus groups, and only a few thousand participants, and based on those initial findings, they decided to roll with it, and they received a massive public backlash and Coca-Cola had to revert to Coca-Cola Classic. And, early positive data doesn't always predict real world behavior, as Coca-Cola was able to find out the hard way, right? Moving forward a few decades to, you guys might not even remember this. Netflix used to have two different arms of their company. They used to still do DVD rentals, as well as had moved on to the digital streaming services. And back in 2011, they decided to split their operation into Netflix and then Quickster, right? Because they had a limited internal survey and test that said, hey, this is probably going to be the best choice. And, they assumed that their loyal fan base represented the general larger population. So they drew too much from a small sample size. And as a result, their stock plummeted, customers revolted, and Netflix had to reverse and go back to what they were doing at that time in order to save their company. They wouldn't be where they are now, or have grown to as highs as they did without reverting and going back to what was working. So another example of when you just draw too many conclusions from a small sample size. Google Glass. Remember, Google Glass was introduced a little while back, and it was, praised by, mostly tech enthusiasts and early adopters. Me, myself, I'm an early adopter to technology. So I was like, whoa, that kind of sounds pretty cool. I could see the real world applications and the potential. So I was one of those guys that, had I had the disposable income, I probably would have bought one and been like, hey, I want to see what this is, right? But they ignored the wider audience, and later the masses shredded them. It was a cultural bomb. Fast forward, now we have, smart glasses that have cameras in them, and all other types of interactive, maybe augmented reality glasses that are widely accepted. And maybe they were just a little bit too soon, and maybe they just didn't have, like I said, they didn't have the right sample size to determine that if it was the right time to do that. And as a result, they paid a massive price, massive losses financially. Early hype doesn't equal market validation. Let me repeat, early hype doesn't equal market validation. So early hype in Carson Wentz doesn't equal Super Bowl success. Keep that in mind, guys. Another little funny one that I like to throw in here. Do you guys remember that movie in 2019 called Cats? Man, it was a dumpster fire of a movie. It was, the CGI was terrible. It was off-putting. It just looked weird to the eye. It just wasn't done right, And it's weird because the stage, the stage show, like the Broadway musical, was wildly successful, right? So how could something that was so wildly successful fail so bad? It's because they put too much into the internal reactions from small inside groups, and which were mostly neutral to positive, right? And they ignored a wider audience and samples that later shredded it, right? So like I said, another cultural bomb, and it was embarrassing to say the least. So that's why you shouldn't be confusing your inner circle's feedback or a small sample size with what appears to be enough data to give you a representative conclusion or answer to the question that you're ultimately trying to find out. Is JJ the guy, right? So it's still too early to say, and I've been saying, JJ is the only option for us if we want to actually succeed. And then the next thing, BlackBerry. Remember the BlackBerry chain that was massive at one point there. I grew up, I was in college in Kitchener, Ontario, where we're like, it's basically next door to RIM, which is the company, the Research in Motion, that is who owns BlackBerry, the name BlackBerry, right? So, they dismissed iPhone's early success and just kind of chalked it up to like a niche kind of consumer interest that probably wasn't going to take on. And they judged Apple's early success wrong, and they took their preconceived notions and their internal reviews and judgments and they misread what was going on. And they missed the smartphone shift entirely. It was massive. You know, a small sample can look meaningless until it's not. So also another factor to say that JJ may look terrible until he doesn't. And then later on in the season, when we're healthy, when this O-line is able to give him the time and he starts getting acclimated to NFL speed and he becomes more comfortable behind there, he might start to prove a lot of people wrong, which is why I keep wanting to tell people, yo, pump the brakes. You don't want to be that guy that people are pulling up your old TikToks or shorts saying, man, get rid of JJ, he's a bum. You know what I mean? Like the guys that come up on these, like, the biggest fails what's it called? Worst reactions to draft picks in the last like 20 years. And it's like they show the guy, losing his mind for the Bills drafting Josh Allen. You know what I mean? Like, as for lack of a better example, right? So always, you don't want to be that guy. And trust me, when you draw too much from a small sample size, you are going to be that guy. So that's why I say, hold on, wait until the end of the season and judge then. And we'll see if he has grown and has shown the ability to be an NFL level quarterback. And that way, at the very end of the season, we'll have a clear path forward. Unlike if we decide to roll with Carson Wentz, where it's just going to be muddy and we're going to have to repeat the whole thing next year. So keep that in mind, guys. And now I want to talk about a couple NFL world examples, right? Players that were, 2-game Hall of Famers, for lack of a better way of saying it. Do you guys remember Mike White, quarterback for the Jets back in 2021? He threw for 405 yards, 3 touchdowns in his first start. Everybody was like, oh, this guy is a franchise quarterback. What happened the next few games? He fell apart and never regained from it. So, do you want to be those guys that were calling for the Jets to sign him on a franchise quarterback level deal before somebody else did? I remember he bounced around a bunch of places, never even saw the field again, if I'm not mistaken. I think, well, maybe he did find another opportunity in New England, but I don't think he survived there either. And I think he's either out of the league or, running a practice squad somewhere. So, which should tell you a lot about Mr. Mike White. Great story, but not a great sample size, right? So, how about back in 2011, Matt Flynn dropped 480 yards and 6 touchdowns in one meaningless Week 17 game. The Seattle Seahawks paid him $19 million to be their starting quarterback. How embarrassing was it for them when Russell Wilson came in and beat him out before the preseason? Another example of judging too much from a small sample size. That time, that was costly for an organization. Big contract, bad conclusion. Keep that in mind. Now, here's a guy that us Minnesota Vikings fans are going to remember. Nick Mullins, the 49ers, 2018. He threw for 262 yards, 3 touchdowns in his debut, and the media went wild. He never replicated it there. And we've seen him put up a ton of yards, and as Vikings fans, we have a lot of memories, especially in the season where Kirk Cousins went down, where after the Pastronaut had his 2 games of success, another guy, the Pastronaut, 2 incredible games, and where is he now? Not sure. Maybe working on rockets somewhere. Maybe working for NASA. I don't know. But just like the Pastronaut Nick Mullins, we saw him come into games and throw for a ton of yards and a bunch of interceptions, and it didn't matter how many touchdowns and whatnot. It was just he was the biggest obstacle, even though he was seemingly the guy that was trying to keep us in those games, right? So keep that in mind, Vikings fans. Another guy that we know, and I have a soft spot for this guy because I think it was my second or third Vikings game at US Bank Stadium. A few years back, Taylor Heineke was on our practice squad, and in week 3, this is when we had 4 preseason games. I went to the dress rehearsal the 3rd week of the game. We were playing the San Francisco 49ers. And the first half, it wasn't looking good. We were getting beat pretty bad. And Brian Hoyer, I think, was the starter that year, and he kind of diced us up in the first half. And I was pretty loaded by the end of the second. By the start of the fourth quarter, I was just partying. I had club access, so I was down there eating food, drinking beers, just having fun because I was like, "Hey, we might as well make the best out of this trip." And then I look up onto the screen and I see, wait, we're making a comeback. And Taylor Heineke, on the final play of the game, won us that game. And that's the game that I got to shake hands with Stephon Diggs and get his signature on my Stephon Diggs jersey. And it was a heck of an experience. But Taylor Heineke, went on the next year for Washington in the 2020 playoffs, or a couple years later in the 2020 playoffs, and nearly upset Tom Brady. He looked like a star. He became a cult favorite. I know, especially by Vikings fans, we were always cheering for him because we like to see our guys do good, even if it's not in purple. And over time, where has Taylor gone? One game doesn't always equal upward trajectory, or the right trajectory, I should say. How about Gardner Minshew? Woo! Minshew Mania took over the NFL. Do you guys remember that after 2 hot games? Wow. Everybody was like, oh man, he is the guy. He had a miracle run, and it was the thing. He was the guy. He was the future. Next year in Denver, regression. Magical seasons can be outliers, not indicators. Still, one season isn't even a full sample size when we look at a veteran's career, right? Still a small sample size, so it kind of counts in this situation. And then the last example, which will definitely hit home for us Vikings fans, Case Keenum, 2017. The perfect example for us. He had a miracle run with us, even ended with the Minneapolis Miracle, and I will always be eternally grateful for that memory. I watched it live, and I can't explain to you the words and the excitement that I felt that day. And I was like a lot of people that wanted him to come back, and I wanted us to give him a shot at another full season to see what he could do. We moved on, and what happened? Right, the next year he regressed. And he's just not that guy. It sucks because he's one of our, favorite guys. He's one of the guys that has earned a spot in Vikings glory for eternity. So it sucks to see him flame out the way that he did, but it's a great example for diving too deep into a small sample size. So, before we go and crown or condemn JJ McCarthy, let's remember, 2 games are still just a blip on the radar. If we judged him like we judged Mike White or Matt Flynn that way, we'd be investing in fool's gold, especially when he turns it around and proves us wrong, like I believe he will. All right, guys, that was my rant and my point of view on some trending topics. The Jacksonville Jaguars, the Mike Shanahan coaching tree is making a massive impact on the NFL. It's great to see what's going on, the revitalization of the Jacksonville Jaguars. I hope this upward trajectory continues. I'm assuming they're still going to have some rough patches. They lost a couple games that some people believe they should have won. And I know they're going to stumble here and there, and consistency isn't going to be a thing that they're going to have immediately because it's just not how it goes. But I hope at the end of the season, at the end of this of the sample size for the Jaguars, they have gone and changed a little bit of their narrative. Then Jordan Addison. Like I said, I wasn't perfect in my youth. Transitioning from my immaturity into being a more mature adult, I was not perfect. So I will not be casting any stones towards him for his immaturity. And I'm not going to hold judgment or condemn anybody for being frustrated or having anger towards his immaturity. I won't deny your right to feel that way, and I'm not gonna condemn you for it or judge against. I'm just gonna agree to disagree, and be happy that you voice your opinion, because that's our right. But I will not be blind to the financial impact that it could be in being able to move on from him if we had to financially in order to bring a run stopper or an offensive lineman, right? So I'm not all out on the idea of getting rid of him for the sake of getting rid of him, or for just any reason, right? If it makes sense financially and it for the betterment of the team, then of course, if it's on the table, let's analyze and do the right thing. If that's moving on from Jordan Addison, that's going to have to be it. Even though I like him and I want him to be a Viking for the extended, for a long time. So I really like the kid. I'm hoping that he redeems himself like Ray Lewis did, right? If they had given up on him and moving on, would they have been the Baltimore Ravens? You know, Ray Lewis, a much older guy at the time, fell prey to his immaturity and lack of self-control. So if he can do it, I know I still to this day suffer from making immature decisions and comments and banter, right? So I'm not going to be casting judgment, but I am going to be open to ideas and anything financially based or backed reasoning for moving on from him, which I don't think they should do, but I will be aware that that is a possibility. And lastly, JJ McCarthy. I just gave you a big long, and that's probably the most recent thing that I've said. So I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but I gave you guys a bunch of examples in the corporate world of people drawing too much from small sample sizes, as well as players in the NFL that also make my point. And I hope you guys understand. And thank you so much for hanging out with me, guys. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe. I am on the road to 500 subscribers. I hope to be there by the end of the calendar year. Every single day, I'm going to be going live at around 4 p.m. Eastern time, give or take a half hour or so, just because work and getting prepared sometimes doesn't always align, but I will always be going live for you guys every single day. Talking Minnesota Vikings, talking trending topics, giving you guys my opinion on the questions that a lot of Vikings fans are making in social media or in the comment sections, right? I'll be consistently doing our power rankings as well as weekly picks. And then stay tuned on Wednesday evenings, because I will be going forward. Last week was the start of Dark Horse Diaries, where I want to shine light on the bottom half of the NFL, the teams that don't get talked about in the mainstream media, the teams that the big football channels don't cover, outside from when they're the laughing stock, or when another team that's very popular kind of gets their way with them, right? I want to, their fan bases show out just as much as the best teams in the league's fan bases. So they deserve a little love, and that's why Wednesday is going to be dedicated Dark Horse Diaries for those. And I know this Wednesday I'm talking Tennessee Titans. I'm definitely going to be talking the Jacksonville Jaguars, even though they're on the higher side, because going into the season they were assumed to be on the low side, so they deserve that. The New England Patriots. Wow, what they're doing is incredible. Other teams, that I see a lot of potential in, that I see a lot of that I personally want to see do well, like Geno Smith and the Raiders. Like, I like Geno Smith. He was the guy that made me fall in love with the footwork in the pocket last year. I never really paid attention to it. And what he was doing in Seattle and his ability to maneuver the pocket and deliver the ball, I thought was incredible. And as a result, I've come to love that aspect of football. And now I look for it more so every single time that I watch football. So I have a soft spot for him, and I want him to do well. I like Alshon Gentry. He was great in college, and I couldn't wait to see what he would do in the NFL. And I really want them to succeed. But not every team can be an outlier. Not every team with a ton of potential can go out there and come out like the CJ Stroud in year one, or Jaden Daniels in year one, right? Not every team can be an outlier, and sometimes they got to go through a lot of rough patches before they grow into their potential, right? And that's what I'm hoping for the Raiders and teams like the Titans, right? I really like Cam Ward. I really like Travis Hunter, so I want to see them do well, right? So there's so many teams out there that I feel need to be spoken about, and that's what's going on Wednesday evening. So check back with me on Wednesday evening after the main live, somewhere around that between 7 to like 8:30 p.m. Eastern time is when I'll be starting it. Because I want to do a little bit of kind of like research and making sure that I find some good things to talk about, right? Going forward, right? And so, yeah, I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me. If you guys got any questions, hey, Samuel, a real one right there, man. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me and listening to my rants every single day. You guys really are the best. I love every single one of you guys. I don't care what fan base you are, and I really want the best for every single one of your teams, except for when they're playing against us. Then I just want them to not suffer any injuries and don't want them to do their best. I want my team to do the best then and come away with the win, but I don't want any massive injuries. And my heart goes out to all the players, Malik Neighbors, just to name one off the top of my head that are struggling with injuries. I can also name a bunch of guys on our O-line, that I'm just hoping that they can get healthy quick and get back at it, because for me, it's always a thing of like, man, all the hard work, all the freaking extra junk food meals, or all the parties they didn't go to, the bars that they didn't go to, just to stay focused and determined to make it to the NFL, just to them, in one moment potentially lose it all, man. Like it hurts. It really hurts. And then I think of their family that's watching, and as they see them get injured, and I can just only imagine the pain and the worry and the anguish that they're going through. So I hate injuries. I wish that they weren't a part of the game, but I get it, and it kind of ties back to one other rant that I've been going for amongst my own friends group, and that, when talking football at work, I think it's been a bad idea to move away from 2 days and hard training and reducing the preseason games, because I used to, in one of my previous careers, not only have I trained people in the business world and the corporate world, but I used to be a personal trainer as well. So I understand the value of putting your body through hard stresses, because it actually builds you up a resistance to injury. Now, mind you have to do the recovery work, the stretching, the physiotherapy work, the massages, all the pressure points and all the things that you need to do in order to maintain your body and your muscles from injury as well. Because if you ignore that aspect of it too, you will increase the likelihood of injury. So it's a double-edged sword, right? And I know a lot of people wanted to say, hey, we got to cut down with the practices, because by the end of the year, a lot of these guys, the wear and tear is building up, and we're seeing too many injuries. And there is validity to that, which is why I say, you have to take care of your body. As hard as you train it, you have to train double as hard for recovery and getting it back to a place where it's ready for the next high intensity training or football game that you're going to put it underway. So I'm not, it's no secret, and I'm going to be shouting to the top that I think it's a bad idea that we move away from the 4 preseason game. I think it's a bad idea that our starters or the best players in the league aren't playing in the preseason, because we're seeing the first month of football is straight unpredictable and even garbage, some could say. Like, for me, I used to have such a really good ability of predicting games or picking games for the majority of the season. And then over the last few years, I have been wildly wrong in September. It's just super difficult to tell. And I think it's a factor of these teams are just not up to the level that they used to be back in the day, when they would come into week 1, fully ready for the NFL speed, and their bodies prepped and primed for an NFL season, right? So, take it what it is, but I think it's a disservice to these players, and I think it opens them up to us fans for bad football in September, and then on a lot of injuries. We see a lot of injuries in preseason, training camp, as well as the first month of football that just used to never happen. And I think it's a direct result for the lack of training and stress that these guys are being put onto their body, and maybe the lack of focus on the recovery aspect of training as well. So that's my 2 cents on that, guys. I hope you guys really enjoyed. Holy moly, we got a ton. I usually have like 1 or 2 guys in here. We got 6 here so far. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. I will be going again live every single day. We are on the road to 500 subscribers, and I really wish that you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, as well as your family and friends, and I hope that the stresses of life and everything just wash away easily for you this week, and you guys are able to, have a great week and find a lot more peace and happiness, and yeah, that's all I want for you guys. That's all I ever want. I want happiness. I want to make you guys smile, and I want to help you guys see the optimism or the perspective that I have, so that maybe it's a little bit different than the negative ones that you see going around. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I really do love every single one of you. Take care, guys. Yeah, even you Lions fans. As much as you guys annoy me. Take care, guys.